see it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got Julia Ostara with me. Thank you so much for being here in this Lightworker series where you get to shine your light, and we're going to learn a little bit about Julia. We're also going to find out how she shares her light and what makes her a light worker, what makes all of you a light worker. So I'm so happy to have Julia here. I will give you just a little snippet about her, and then we can go straight into the interview. Julia, aka Jules, lives in the ancient Appalachians with twin boys, a guitar man, a feisty orange tabby cat, and many woodland creatures. She might appear to be a mundane, middle-aged, homeschooling mom with bills to pay. Yet she is painting the story of an optimistic mountain mama, explorer, and presenter, casting rainbows all around her. Julia's an artist, the author of The Girl Who Dances with Delight, and the creator of two inspiring oracle card decks. Wow, that's awesome, Julia. You got your own cards. So visit Julia at www.thrivetrue.com. You can also receive complimentary newsletters and a fun, free online creative course from the following link, which will be joygift.splashthat.com, which we will be also including at the bottom of this information when we send out the interview. So we want everybody to know how they can find you, Julia. Welcome. I feel so blessed to have you here today.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this and organizing it and bringing these messages, you know, and just this discussion and honoring that. So thank you for that as well, and inviting me to be part of it.
Yay, thank you, Julia. So as we're talking about light workers and what a light worker is, I would love for the audience to hear your take on what is a light worker and how you feel that you are a light worker.
It's so funny because you sent me that question in advance and I don't even remember what I wrote. I remember that I had said something about I never really had considered myself a light worker, I don't think, or called myself that. But then as just I was preparing for, you know, meeting with you and doing a little dance and kind of getting myself into the moment, I started thinking about lightening up. And on my book it says, liven up, lighten up, let your heart sing, down at the bottom. Wow. And it's talking about dancing with delight. And so it's funny that I never thought to call myself that, but I talk about light, you know, plenty. There's also a chapter about darkness, which I think I mentioned. And I think about that too as being this rich place where we grow just like a seed does, right? So there's that, both the light and the dark aspect. But I was thinking before I walked down here, a different kind of way that I think about lightening up, and what I meant kind of there is like you feel lighter, like with less weight, right, on your shoulders. And I was thinking about that and how maybe being a light worker, maybe as we all think about that and just how we interact each moment with different people and with ourselves, I was thinking about, am I being a source of encouragement and like lifting, you know, versus being a source of putting some weight or burden on someone, making it heavier, adding something heavy, whether to myself or to someone else's life. You know, if I'm passing someone on the street, or if I'm judging someone or criticizing someone based on appearance when I don't even know that person, you know, or whatever it might be. And that struck me as maybe a part of it that I hadn't thought about before. And, you know, with the new year, lots of people talk about losing weight and lightening up that way. And I thought about it in the symbolic sense of losing that kind of mental or emotional baggage that we all carry, and not being a source of it for ourselves, not doing that to myself when I'm in conversation with myself in my own head, and also not wanting to be that kind of source for others, but rather wanting to be a source of encouragement and acceptance, you know, in this world that tells us all these things that we should be or do. And that's why I didn't even include like stuff about my education or background in my bio, because that's not necessarily defining our value. even though it's something that we've done and part of our experience, and obviously, you know, forms part of our perspective and all of that. But to recognize that we are all valuable no matter what our resume kind of looks like, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, Julia, thank you. And you're absolutely right. And thank you so much for making it something very simple and very understandable for our viewers, because we want them to, we want you all to understand that we're not, when we talk about being a light worker, it's exactly what Julia is expressing. It is about helping to promote the greatness that lives in all of us. And we're so many times surrounded by messages or information, even from our childhood or relationships that weren't good for us, where they're telling us, where somebody might have been telling you or telling us that we weren't so good, or we weren't all that, or we weren't that special. And we work through that. But a lot of times we forget that being a light worker is not just what's going on in the present moment, but it's also how we have impacted people throughout our whole life, and how people have impacted us also. And we get to decide whether we want to surround ourselves by those that maybe squash us or make us feel small and little, or whether we want to just embrace those people who do come with light and fill us with this goodness. Because that's my interpretation, just as yours, Julia. It is about goodness. It's just be nice, and being nice, you uplift somebody, you ascend, you help their energy elevate. And that's what the whole Lightworkers series, even using that language, I was very intentional in being able to use those words, because I want to reach out and tap into people like yourself, Julia, that has done such a beautiful job of using your light to share and to express it and in your art. So I have to ask you about that beautiful, I know all the paintings behind you are gorgeous, but I want our audience to know about the one that's particularly behind you right now.
Okay, and when you were talking, you made me think of that. This one, it's called Wind of Change, just because that song was in my head about taking me to the magic of the moment when I was painting it. But it's actually, it has the energy of Namaste, where you're bowing to the divine within. Wow. And she happens to be bowing to the divine light within herself as well as others. So the whole painting was done before that kind of what I put in there to represent a bow was in there. And she just kind of said that was what the last finishing touch was meant to be. And I'm like, how do I do that? I didn't even, I couldn't even think about how to make that appear visually, the image that I was getting. But I just said, okay, I'm just going to trust it and go with it. And that's the way that I create art, is to just try to be brave and take, put the paintbrush down, and it'll either work out or it doesn't, but I can always paint over it. So, that was this one story, and that was the medicine that it had for me. And I think, that is on one of the cards in one of my decks. I think it's in the Soul Songs deck, which is this one. And that's the energy of it, is that we can glide gracefully on the wind of change and bow to the divine light within each of us. That's kind of her message or prayer. There's way more to it, but that way that I journaled when she was talking to me, but that's kind of the gist of it. And one other thing that you made me think of when you were talking about Lightworkers and Lightening Up and the messages we've inherited, or that we're constantly fed, the external, in addition to the whatever's going on within us, made me think about the word freedom and liberation. And I talk about that in my book a lot, about being liberating, self-liberating, and being a light worker in our own lives and in our children or anyone that we interact with, that giving them the freedom to grow is one big part of it, and to be without all the assumptions or presumptions about who someone is, or the story, like you were talking about, what our story is, and being able to, even though we have that, also kind of be free of that. And that's why in this one, why she wanted to be bare, was because she was not hiding. and she was not carrying any of that on her or with her.
Wow, that is
That's
so
what it meant by the wind of change, being free.
wow. That's so amazing, Julia. Thank you so much for sharing that. The art is beautiful. And the fact that you have your own cards, that's so great that you get to, again, sharing messages and giving away from such a good place. So of course, the people that you serve and the people that you are that you work with and you come in contact with are going to receive your light. Just like we were saying earlier, we didn't really want to, as much as I gave you some questions, we wanted this to be an organic interview, because at the end, we want to allow the information that's being channeled through you and myself to be what the audience gets to listen to and to hear. And so you have a deck of cards that helps to channel some information and give messages to people. Can you tell us how those cards came, how that deck came about?
Sure, there's two of them.
Okay.
So this is the two combined, what I call the double decker. So there's one called Soul Songs and one called The Heart of Life. And it was something I had wanted to do for a long time, but you know how you have that kind of like, oh, someday I want to do this thing about whatever might be on your, dream sheet kind of thing, your wildest dreams. And I didn't really know how, and I was in the process of making the art. And so I just kept painting and kept going until, whatever, till it felt right, till I had enough. And what really made it finally happen, like kind of lit the fire to make it happen, instead of letting it procrastinate or letting fear of what others might, how they might be received, drive it, was I had a health scare. And thankfully, I'm okay and past that now. But at the time, it was scary, and I didn't know if it might be something similar. My mom had passed away from ovarian cancer a few years before, and I was having similar symptoms, so it was scary. And I have 2 kids, so I wanted to make sure that they had something to hold on to that had my loving energy in it. And, they could not fit 88 paintings probably in their house, or, easily take with them in their car to wherever they go through their life. So that's how it actually finally happened, even though I kind of had it in my head sooner, was that I wanted them to be able to hold my love in their hands. And my energy and whatever kind of lessons, had flowed through me, whatever I had to share that way. So some of the art on the cards are from early paintings that, are so different than what I paint now. And then other ones are much more recent. And I was just going to pick one for us. How about that for while we're here? Is that all right if I invite loving guidance and just see what comes forth for us? Let's see. Interesting. We got environment. And this one, it says habitat, surroundings, see the beauty. What's interesting to me about this one is there's these little diamond shapes in here, and it was inspired by something called diamond dust that I saw for the first time ever living here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It happens sometimes in the winter when it's really cold outside, but it's not snowing, and there's these little bits of ice in the air and it sparkles. And that makes me think of how we can be like that in our environment. And so, you never know how you might interpret a card that you draw. It could totally have meant take care of your environment or Mother Nature, or let that take care of you. But to me, because of our discussion, then I thought of it as being like those little sparks of light in our environment and in our surroundings. And that's kind of what we're talking about, I think, right?
Yes, the light. Wow, that's so beautiful. I've got to share, Julia, as you brought that up, and the card is the card that you chose, and how your interpretation. When I decided that I was going to create the Lightworker series interview series, was because I had in a meditation this idea that there was that somehow my message, or what I speak about, which is to help women, help them heal what's behind the makeup, because so many times we mask a lot of things and we pretend to be strong and happy and filled with joy, when inside we're not we're not feeling whole and complete. And so during that meditation, when I was getting all this information to create the Lightworker series and to begin to interview light workers and start getting this message out to the collective, one of the way that it was shown to me was I was seeing all these little lights all over until I could actually envision, and it looked like the globe of the world, but it was depicted by little lights. And it's, again, the confirmation that we're here to share and to expand this message. I live in Miami and you're in a mountain somewhere, and here we are, we're able to have this conversation and be able to share and to get to know each other and work collaboratively to help so many people raise their vibration and their consciousness. And you know, all of this is possible because we get to see all those little lights, and where before it was so difficult because we would have to physically meet up with each other because all this technology didn't exist. Now we have all of these wonderful means to be able to connect with each other and to connect so many people with your message, my message, and the message of all our viewers out there, because I know that the people that are watching and listening to this, there is a reason why they're here too. And I know that it's because they also have such a beautiful impact to share with the world, and we're just encouraging them to do that. So
yes.
Thank you for that card. Wow.
You gave me chills as you were talking about it. Can I add something to what you just shared? Because and to just let the audience know, this is only like the second conversation Eileen and I have really had, right? We had a phone conversation before, so we don't know each other that well. And so to have these synchronicities is, like you said, that confirmation. It's that, you know, I don't even know what the right word is for it, but it is that coming together and feeling the pat on the back that maybe we need, that this is the right kind of path or whatever. But I have a similar painting to this one that I have had collaged. I had taken from a magazine, all different women. So this could be to anyone, but I was specifically thinking of a gathering of women because I think that we've carried a lot of weight, not meaning physical, but that has prevented us from being very light, you know? And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about having a supportive community of women, because as much as sometimes people might point, and I'm not that usually gender focused, but as much as people might point to that it is a gender thing that keeps women down a lot of times we do it to each other, you know? And so that's the energy I was thinking about, and it was how it's shedding all of those, like you said, shed the mask and the makeup. And in that painting, I was taking all these images from magazines and from media, and I painted over them all, and they all got little diamond like prisms so they were these little rainbows, you know, that was like our genuine, what's underneath it all. And we all had that. We all had that same divine spark within that we could then share that way. And when you were talking about your vision, that's like very similar to the energy that I was feeling when I was letting that flow through me. And I talk about it being the magic and medicine found in art because that's where that comes for me. Sometimes it can be journaling, you know, meditation, different things, and I use all of the above. Whatever works, you know, I want to tune in and tap into that. And I feel so much better when I actually do that instead of letting some other soundtrack play in my head that is not healthy for me or for my family or for my bigger family. And you made me think about that too when you talked about it, because you know, like we don't know each other that well, yet we are part of the human family, you know, and we don't recognize that often enough. And so part of being a light worker to me is that too, that expanding how we define ourselves and how we define our family, and not being segregated so much by by a variety of labels, right? There are so many ways we do that based on our beliefs or our politics or whatever, you know, age, it could be anything. And so to me, it is also expanding that or bridging those things so that we're feeling a bigger whole. And so environment is so fitting. I had no idea we were going to talk about that, right? Or that card was going to be drawn out of 8. But that's what came up. And there is that aspect of it that expansion, and that makes you feel lighter because you don't feel like you're all alone.
Yes.
And I think about it a lot because I've known a lot of people in my life who have had a lot of heartache, or who've dealt with depression, or who have been wading through grief, or who have children who may not be 100% healthy, or whatever it might be that's, you know, weighing on them. Recently, a friend of mine, my college roommate, her sister committed suicide. And so that was just after Thanksgiving, and that weighs heavy, you know, on my heart. And we're talking about lightening up, and I would have never known that. And so part of it is having the courage to, like you said, shed the masks and really have that vulnerability to be willing to reach out and have this conversation, and without judging one another. You know, if we can get past like looking at, oh, well, she looks like Barbie, so, you know, like I could almost say that about you. And maybe that would make me assume that she has nothing in her life that could be like she couldn't understand. But that's not usually the case. As soon as you actually like open up, and if you share your like scar or heartache or wound, they're gonna have theirs too. They may not be the same, but they're gonna have theirs. That's part of life, you know? And if we can acknowledge that, even though that maybe feel like the opposite of light, I think that's how we have to shed light on that too, to be able to heal together and to be able to support one another in that reimagine, like that collage I did, reimagine it where we're not dividing ourselves up, you know, by talent or by what looks or appearance or whatever it is, by money, you know, whatever it may be, so that we're actually getting to that point of the core, I guess, underneath, you know, is like we're all just want to do our best in life. We all want to enjoy as much as we can and not feel guilty about enjoying life. Because that's part of it too. Like that was part of the weight that I carried, was feeling guilty for having the blessings that I do in my life, in spite of, you know, abuse and all these other things that have happened to me. And how do we do that? Why do we do that? And lightning, like I remember making a decision one New Year's, years ago, not this year, but saying that I was going to lighten up. I found a feather, I put it in my journal, and I said, I'm not carrying all of that anymore. I'm not going to carry the guilt or the shame or the regret or the victim, you know, the whatever comes with that I was carrying. And that's part of being a light worker in your own life as well as others, is letting yourself lighten the load that you've been carrying, whatever that might be. If any way we can do that by just like sharing, whether it's in a book or it's in a blog post, it doesn't have to be, you know, this came about from many different blog posts and other things. So I didn't sit down intending to write a book all at once or to create those cards all at once. Those were what came after, just taking it one little baby step at a time. You know, so for whoever's listening, whether you want to do anything like that as a career, or whether you just want to do something in your community that probably can have just as big an impact in someone near you's, you know, life. Like I volunteer at a homeschool group to teach once a week. And so there's only 6 to 8 kids in either of my classes, but the difference I could make in those 6 to 8 lives to, you know, help encourage them and prepare them to go out into the world is significant. It doesn't have to be a huge number. Like I know that's one of the things I sent to you, is we don't have to all be Oprah. No. It might be great, and Oprah's power is wonderful, that she can share that message and that she can bring people like our message out because of her, you know, platform, her ability to reach so many people. So that's wonderful. Yes. But we can also do it right in our own backyard. And like this, I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, so I actually used to live really near you, and now I live almost 1,000 miles away, you know, and people might be watching this from the other side of the world, and wow, how amazing. Like that's magical to me that we can do that, that we wouldn't have imagined so many years ago. So that is expansive right there. The fact that we can start breaking down those barriers that we've, you know, that we assume about people that live in a different culture or place, and actually build bridges to get to know each other through groups online and things like this. I receive a card every year from India from an art friend there, and I always look forward to it and put it on my mantle, because wow, who would have ever guessed? I've never been to India, but
Right.
she sends me a prayer and a mandala, and I put it on my mantle every year. And I just love that, thanks to the internet, because that's how we connected and that we've never met in person, I have that ability to have that kind of relationship, you know, and that's healthy to start, for us to start having that. We're rebuilding the kind of communities that we have, both locally and globally, when we
Yes.
do that. It has such potential.
Yes. And it's so beautiful, Julia, just as you made note, that we get to inspire people by what we've gone through, right? Because a lot of times, just like yourself, I did go through an abusive relationship, a very long abusive relationship. And so we get to learn from those experiences, but it also helps us to remember what we were going through when we were going through it, and how to help others come out of it because we did it, right? So the power that we had to remove ourselves from that situation is also what we get to teach and share with other women, so that if they're feeling caught up in this space of being abused or not feeling good about themselves, that we can teach also from that place of vulnerability and authenticity. And I've got to go back to your environment card, because when you're talking about journaling and meditating, which is something that I believe in, it's what I do. Actually, I teach people a lot about meditation and journaling. And as a therapist, those were also techniques and tools that I used even when I was working with children. But when we're creating the space, if you realize what you got behind you is a space that makes you feel good. For me, it's the crystals, it's the books, it's the inspiration that comes from people that have been mentors of mine. So when we get to create an environment at home and where we work, or the places that we visit, that make us feel good, then even our families, we're sharing our light through what we love. And when we're in that space that makes us feel so good, then they get to feel good too. When I'm working with parents, sometimes they question, I don't understand. My child's doing so well in school, yet they come home and it's chaos. And the first thing that I encourage them to do is to take a look at their space. If their space doesn't feel good to them, it's not going to feel good to the kids. It's not going to feel good for the family. And so thank you so much. That I love that you brought up that card. And again, it was something that I hadn't included as part of this interview series, but definitely is something that I believe that our viewers are going to benefit by creating a space that makes them feel good. And the more love you feel in what you're doing, and how you create this space in your environments, and how you get to share that with the people that you love, the more it expands. And then now your kids are talking to other kids, or your friends are talking to other friends. And I love to encourage people to remember that we all impact at least 100 people. Typically, we connect to enough people that we can have a reach of about 100 people. And if we're each projecting this from a place of love and light and just wanting goodness for everybody around us, then imagine, of course, we're going to be able to tap into expanding our messages, and more than anything, the light and the lightning into their lives as well. So it's been such a pleasure having you today, Julia. I know that we're gonna work some more. We're gonna do a lot more things together, because your message, your energy, your light has really made this episode and this segment so beautiful for me. And I know that our viewers are just gonna be wowed by you and by what you share. So can you tell them, maybe leave them with a message, and also how they can find you? Although I will be putting the information on our link when we put it out there, but just so that they can hear from you.
Sure. But I think I'll share, if it's okay, what the letters in dance stand for, because that's what I did right before we got on the call.
Okay.
And it has really helped me on a daily basis, just as an easy, short little ritual. But I try it for a moon. I suggest trying it for a full moon, like a moon cycle, a month.
Okay.
And see if it makes It's a moon dance, right? I'm a fan of Van Morrison. It's a marvelous night for moon dance. Well, and it doesn't have to be technically dancing if you don't care to dance. Although if you haven't in a while, I encourage you to try it again, because you never know
I love
how
dancing.
it might feel, and not like
Yes.
not like you're at a dance club in
Right.
South Beach, but
Right,
like which is, I'm not judging it at all, but that you have no audience. Dance like no one's watching, you know, if you decide to dance for your movement. But the D stands for dance, and it could be any movement. Dance is what I used for the acronym, but it could be stretching or yoga. It could, you know, be gentle if you need something gentle that day. Doesn't need to be getting the heart rate up, but it can be. So whether you're in the mood for salsa or you're in the mood for a little stretching, either one is good. And the A is for affirmations. And it's just tuning into the soundtrack that's in our head and what is playing and choosing what we want to be playing. If something is on repeat, maybe we want to change the song, change the tune, right? So it could just be that I'm capable, or that I'm valuable, or that I'm have something to give, that I'm generous. It could be whatever, you know, whatever comes to you that day. It could be that I'm healthy. That's my often one, because that starts and is a ripple effect in every way when we are feeling healthy and whole, and we can, you know, reflect that and project that to others, ripple that out. And then the N is for notes. So you could just jot down your affirmation if you want to, or something you're thankful for. The C is for celebration. So you could write down either one. It could be together. A lot of times my affirmations and my celebration go together, because I'm just inviting more of that blessing into my life, you know, that I'm grateful for my healthy home and family, whatever it might be. And the E is for embrace, and just give yourself a self-love hug.
I love that.
And let life love you.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of other alternatives for the letters in the book, but those are the basic steps, basic dance steps. And then you can, you know, play with different ones. But if people would like to just try that, maybe after you watch this, it could just be 5 minutes to do those steps real quick. Dance, affirmations, notes, celebration, embrace. Or it can be 15 minutes, 40 minutes if you have more time. I usually feel fabulous afterwards. So I say 5 or 15 minutes to feel fabulous. You know, just take that little bit of time for a little dance with yourself and with life, with, you know, whatever, with the divine, whatever you feel like inviting to dance with you in the moment. Beautiful. And maybe that will help lighten up your spirit, and you'll get to share that with others as well, and pass it on. Invite others to the dance party.
Awesome.
Invite others to dance with you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Julia. It's been such a blessing. Again, I feel honored to have you on here today, and you continue to shine your light and to share your message. And I'm so blessed for having you here today. Thank you so much again for your time and for sharing, and for the beautiful art and everything that you do to make this a better world. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And thank you to everyone who took the time for yourself to join us, because you have made an investment, and whatever comes from this, whatever ripples that you end up, whatever ripple effects this has, because you tuned in to give it time to think about this for yourself. I just want to also thank everyone.
Yes. And thank you for allowing us to be here and to be instrumental. Thank you, Julia.